Lenovo, Nile, and Ingram Micro are in the news this week, and who better to break it down with us than Business of Tech podcast host Dave Sobel, and touch on environmental sustainability and perfecting the QBR, plus a special guest interview with Shannon Murphy and Dave Sutton on Zomentum's 2022 Growth Survey. It's ChannelPro Weekly, number 240, Seafood Pastries. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 240. My name is Matt Whitlock, Technology Editor, Online Director, and your host of this show for folks out there who are MSPs, VARs, IT integrators, system builders, IT consultants, virtual CIOs. That's a thing now. If any of those things sound like what you do for a living, you are in the right place, and we are glad to have you. If those do not sound like the things that you do every day, I'm still glad you're here anyway, because you just gave us another listen or another view, and we appreciate that as well. But stick around, you might learn something, you might enjoy your time here, and you might even be thinking about a career change when we come out on the other side. I don't know, we'll find out, we'll see how it goes. Joining me each and every week is the man of the hour, the man who keeps the subway running on time. I use subway, it's I guess still a train, so it's the same tired reference I use day in and day out here, Rich. But welcome, executive editor Rich Friedman.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. And I'm wondering, should we maybe incorporate like a baking segment into the show and diversify the audience a little bit? MSPs, VARs, system builders, and people who bake.
Yeah, we have talked a lot about pastries on the show as of late, and including later in this show, because we recorded the interview a little while ago for time reasons. But we talk about pastries there. We've talked about donuts before. We did a versus game with donuts recently. I think we need to expand our audience, Rich, out and have it be half IT related and half business of donuts and pastries.
I think that's a winner. I think that's the concept the world has been waiting for.
I think so, and I know who could give us some sound and sage advice on the world of baking, because I think he was formerly a baker in a former life. We'll find out, because we're going to ask him here in just a second. But I'm so glad he's here. We've got an awesome guest host. He's the host of the Business of Tech podcast, a wonderful podcast that everyone should be listening to or watching, by the way. He's also a leading expert on IT and managed services, cloud computing, and virtualization. He is a featured speaker at many industry events, including some of our own in the past, and he is the author of the book Virtualization Defined. Please welcome the one, the only, the awesome Dave Sobel. Welcome, Dave.
I'm intensely jealous of your insights into baking needs. Like, this is clearly an underserved audience that we've now all identified, and I'm jealous that you guys figured it out first.
With as many people that consume pastries every year, there's probably a pretty good market to go after.
You'd think the Google searches from that alone would be better than most IT services kind of stuff. So clearly we'd be drawing in lots of views and likes, right?
Yep. I'm changing my focus, Rich. I'm just going all in with donuts, I think, going forward. So awesome. Well, Dave, it's awesome to have you back here on the show with us. It's always a joy when you're on. I do listen to your podcast regularly. I can't say I listen to every single episode, but
there are a lot of them. So I appreciate the listen. Thank you. And it's always fun to be back and mix it up with you guys. You guys always bring interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah, good. Well, and for those who maybe don't know who you are or listen to the Business Tech podcast, who is Dave?
Sure. So I was an MSP for a decade. Everyone always likes to start with I did that, have been in the shoes of most solution providers. During that time was a Microsoft MVP, helped launch peer groups in Europe, wrote a book, did all that kind of stuff, and had a successful exit, sold the business, and then, went on to actually work with vendors that you may have known. Two different RMM providers, was with Level Platforms for almost 2 years. We sold that to AVG. I was then at GFI to Logic Now, and we, of course, sold that then to SolarWinds, and had a total 6-year run at that section of 3 named companies. I left about 3 years ago to do this and focus on taking that field experience as well as vendor and industry experience to try and deliver some independent analysis. And that's what the Business of Tech is we look at some stories, what's going on in the industry, and then attach why do we care to each of those stories to put it in perspective for those that focus on IT services.
Yeah, and it is a great show, and one that, again, that I highly recommend people check out as well. And you do that show, it's pretty much every day, right?
Every business day, and then we do some long form stuff on the weekends for topics we want to dig further into, like crypto for IT services, or dig into potential trends, or interview owners to give us their insights, and look for experts that can give us additional areas of that. And I've spent some time on mental health and VCIO services, a bunch of different stuff that we want to expand on.
Awesome. And of course, I do listen to Dave Sobel, but also subscribe to Channel 4 Weekly everywhere podcasts are found, because here we get a lot of great, amazing insights from not only awesome guest hosts like Dave Sobel, but usually great interviews with industry experts and all kinds of stuff every week. And because we are fun, and well, Dave's fun too. So I guess
all a good collaborative community. You listen to subscribe to all of them. They're great.
Subscribe to all of them, right? Listen to them all. Why not? Because you're just going to be that much smarter if you do. Rich, we've got a lot in the show to cover and to go through. But I wanted to take a quick minute to see how your week is going. Have you had a donut this week?
Say again?
Have you had a donut this week?
I have not. It's Thursday, sort of midday-ish as we record this, and I have not had a donut all week. And you know what? I honestly, because we did talk donuts at the end of the last episode, and you were just raving about sour cream donuts, and ever since then I've been thinking I got to find myself one of them. I've never had that, and now I'm really interested.
So Dave, you're a Dunkin' Donuts guy, right?
I am a Dunkin' Donuts guy. There's one bicycle distance from my house.
Sour cream donut.
Oh yeah,
one of the most amazing things on the planet.
It's the way to go. Like, definitely want to try one of those out. Now I will try and rotate it a little bit, but that's in the rotation.
That is a tasty donut. Definitely I don't eat a lot of donuts anymore. I'm trying to slim down and be a little more svelte. But if I were standing in the line of Dunkin' Donuts, that would be my first choice. The original glazed Krispy Kreme is also still a very tasty donut, especially if you get it hot right out of the fryer.
Oh, that's magic.
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Classics are classics for a reason.
They are. And what would be your favorite donut, Dave?
You know, I'm actually a sucker for that chocolate cake donut that Dunkin' Donuts does, like the glaze, but it's chocolate cake. I particularly like that one.
A chocolate, and it is a beautiful creation. It's a chocolate donut caked in a hard layer of sugar. I mean, you can't go wrong with
Exactly.
That,
it's
right?
all good things mixed together. How can we go wrong?
And it's low carb if you eat it upside down. I don't know.
I can justify it by bicycling up to the Dunkin' Donuts. That's the trick. There's exercise to get there.
Awesome. So you're also, Dave, you're a collector of lots of interesting things. Tell us a little bit about your background for those who are watching.
Yeah, so I'm a retro video game collector, and I was also a video gamer. So my studio reflects my personality on that, including like my original Commodore 64 monitor and rig, and an Apple II GS, plus some video gaming memorabilia and stuff. It's designed to reflect sort of my personality, and then sort of my business advice of start doing things.
Yeah, and it's an awesome background. I relate to that. You know, I got my old video game stuff back here. I don't have quite the collection of the cool memorabilia that you do, but it's always good to have a fellow gamer on the show. Although, do you find the time to play a lot of video games still, or do you just kind of collect and play a lot?
No, I make time. I actually just finished Stray on the PS5, which was a great little sort of mostly indie game, and I'm going to move on to Guardians of the Galaxy. Was the last release that I'd missed and wanted to spend some time on. So I do make some time to play those.
Yeah, that's great. And what do you primarily game on these days?
I'm a console guy. I freely admit that I'm a console guy, and I just bounce back and forth between the Xbox Series and the PS5, depending on the title I want to play.
Very cool. Very cool. So give us 2 games, 3 games that you played recently that you'd recommend.
Horizon Forbidden West was fantastic. It was a great story. I sunk 160 hours, I think, into that. It was a huge investment of time, but really rewarding and a good time. So I'll give a nod to Stray. That's only about 4 hours, 5 hours of story.
Very short, yeah, very short experience.
Yeah, but beautifully well told. And I'm a sucker for a good story, so that's where my gaming sort of gravitates to. I was a little disappointed in Halo Infinite. Played through the story, and it was good, but not as great as I was hoping for. Those are sort of my last 3 plays.
Yeah, well, good choices. Good. I do recommend Stray. I did play through that one. I don't get a lot of time to play through games, but everyone was talking about it, and I recently lost Mr. Kitty. I know people who listen to the show a long time know that I had a office dweller in the office here with me pretty much all the time, every show, in my lap in many cases on most shows, and he recently passed away. So I played it in his memory, but it's a cute game and a really good story. So
yeah, my cat actually was the only game he's ever sat and watched. So clearly there was something to that.
I don't know if my Mr. Kitty would have bothered watching. He was a very lazy cat. He probably might have stuck his head up for a moment to look good, but he was usually just content sleeping in my lap or driving me crazy by scratching the door if I didn't let him in. But let's not talk about Mr. Kitty because I get all teary-eyed when I talk about it. It's still very, very recent. But we got a lot to talk about. We've talked to Dave Sobel a lot in the past, folks, on some of the things that he does in his background. And he's been on several shows. We'll put some in the show, some of the different shows he's been in the show description, so you can go back and you can learn a little bit more about him. So we're not retreading a lot of old ground. But Dave, it's always awesome when you're here, and folks, it's always great when Dave's here because we get a lot of his really, really good, keen insights on a lot of the stories that we're going to talk about. A wonderful guest host. We have a lot of wonderful guest hosts, but I do enjoy it when Dave Sobel comes on because he also doesn't hold back, as you will all see, and he likes to have a good, disruptive, but in a good way. And he's a lot of fun to have around. So this will be a fun show. Rich, we've got a big show ahead too. We were going to talk about Lenovo. We're going to talk about Nile. We're going to talk about Ingram Micro very briefly. We're going to talk about a couple other stories that hit the site. One is about environmental sustainability. It'll be an interesting one to go through, and then perfecting the QBR. We're going to talk about that as well later on. We've got another interview coming up with Shannon Murphy and Dave Sutton. One is from Zomentum, the other is from Wingman Marketing. We're going to talk about growth, this growth survey that they did, and some of the insights and key takeaways that came out of that. Be a very interesting discussion as well, and more. So, folks, strap in. We're gonna dive right in. Rich, let's talk about Lenovo first. They've uncorked a bottle of wine. No. They've uncorked infrastructure solution stuff. What about that?
Yeah. I don't know this for a fact, but I have a theory about exactly why they did what they did this week. What they did this week was announce a massive wave of new infrastructure products, servers and storage and hyperconverged infrastructure and so on. They did it all at once, and they did it on September 21st, which was the 30th anniversary to the day of the date when IBM released its first x86-based server. And then, of course, many years later, Lenovo buys the server business from IBM. So I think they took advantage of this anniversary to launch this unbelievably huge wave of infrastructure products, over 50 additions to the various infrastructure product lines. 15 new Think System servers, a mix of AMD, Intel, and ARM-based processors, everything from towers to 1 and 2U rack devices to much bigger scale-up form factors, DDR5 memory, PCIe Gen 5. They're saying a 2x speed improvement in artificial intelligence model development. And one of the points they emphasized to me in the interview is that pretty much everything we're going to talk about here is AI ready, basically. This is a big theme over there right now, is they want to make sure that all of their infrastructure products have the horsepower to handle artificial intelligence. For some years, Lenovo has had a water cooling technology called Neptune direct water cooling. That has previously only been available for their high performance computing products. Now you can actually get that as an option with general purpose servers, which is kind of interesting. Let's see, 2 entirely new families of storage, the DE6400 and DE6600. 50% price performance boost, 100% increase in data processing performance. You can get those in hybrid formats or all flash. And according to Lenovo, the all flash edition of the DE6600 is the first entry-level NVMe only storage device on the market. So and entry level is, they're saying sub $25,000. So here's the first time that something that has only NVMe storage is available for less than $25,000. 32, count them, 32 new hyperconverged infrastructure systems added to the Think Agile product line. I won't even get into the details there. I will point out that they also, in conjunction with all that new hardware, they introduced a few sort of pre-configured solutions that you can run on the hardware. One for, no surprise, artificial intelligence, another for backup and recovery, another for VDI. And they're saying these new devices can support 25% more VDI users per device than comparable previous generation. We have spoken before on the podcast, Matt, about the TrueScale for high performance computing solution that Lenovo introduced early this year. which was designed to make high performance computing a consumption-based as a service kind of option for people. They've added something to that now called extra rack, because in the past the system or the offering was kind of tailored to people who might add, you know, a core or two here or there, but there are companies that want the ability to just add an entire rack of high performance computing devices at once. And with this extra rack thing, you can pre-install those. You don't get billed for it. It's just waiting for you to flip the switch and turn it on. But instead of increasing capacity on your as a service high performance computing in little increments, you can put an entire rack online at once that way. A new version of their xClarity management system, which was kind of data center oriented before. They had a separate product for edge environments and branch sites and so on. They essentially rolled those together in into what they're now calling xClarity 1. So one console to look at to manage, you know, any device basically from Lenovo wherever it sits. And then some additions to the ThinkShield security platform that comes in the ThinkSystem product. So big wave of stuff all at once on the 30th anniversary of the very first x86 IBM server.
And a partridge in a pear tree. I mean, like, why, like what a list. If you're going to go out, go big.
Go big or go home. And Rich, we may as well just go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about all 50 different SKUs in at length. Starting with, no, let's not do that. Let's not do that. One question though, because you're talking about the TrueScale, right? I remember when we were talking about that, how like you can put it in, you don't get billed until you use it. What if you never turn it on, right? Like what if you get a TrueScale rack installed in your business and you just never use it? Do they bill you eventually or what?
I have no idea. It's a great question. And I mean, you know, this is kind of how it works. With all of these as a service hardware products, you know, like on-prem hardware products, there is always that issue. I mean, everybody buys them scaled beyond what they need right now. So every vendor, every manufacturer of these devices is essentially getting, I mean, you know, I don't think this does big financial damage, but they're essentially getting underpaid for that stuff when they put it out there. I guess it's just an occupational hazard in the hardware as a service era.
Maybe. I have to imagine there's some minimum compute threshold that you have to use in order to get one of those installed. But I'm going to find out. I'm going to call Lenovo and I'm going to get one put in right behind me in place where this bookcase is, and I'm never going to use it. And let's see if they send me a bill.
Literally don't plug it in.
Yeah, there's not even an outlet right there. It's going to go right there. I think that'd be fun. Let's do that. So there is a lot here to talk about. Lots of interesting things. We don't have the time to talk about all of them, but I do want to give Dave an opportunity to talk about maybe a couple of the things that you found the most interesting, most exciting. I personally think the NVMe flash storage array for what they're offering for is really cool, and I really want one really bad because that would be awesome. But there's a lot here. Dave, what stood out to you?
I want to make, there are two things that struck me. First off, it was actually like a really interesting, well-played marketing bit. If you're going to go out, right, go out on your anniversary, refresh the whole line, and say all the right things on stage, like tip of the hat. Like that's a well-executed launch plan. But then I was immediately struck by the data that always sticks in my head. Gartner says 80% of all new workloads will be in the cloud in 2025, right? That is 3 years from now. That is well within the operational time frame that we would be talking about buying exactly the things that they just launched. Now, I get it. A cloud is somebody else's computer. I get the joke, right? But literally when I'm listening to them talk about the fact that, oh, you know, this is for SMB clients, I just had to say, like, I don't think it is. I'm not saying there aren't markets for all these places. I'm not saying there aren't use cases for all this stuff. 80% of all new workloads going to be in the cloud. That is 3 years from now. You got to draw a line between what they're talking about in terms of product line and that future state. And for me, there is a bit of a disconnect there. And so I want to say, like, look, I get it. It's a cool line. There's a bunch of different things that fit in very specific use cases. But is this the broad future? I think even Lenovo knows that. Now, it's clever. It's very smart. We were teasing about the consumption model, but that's a smart way to bridge, like to do it on a consumption model, take it as the vendor and scale up with the customer as a bridge to where I think we're going.
And TrueScale, by the way, is the name of their hardware as a service program. I referenced it in terms of high performance computing, but there are lots of other things available as a service through TrueScale, including everything that we just talked about here is available through that TrueScale program.
Wow, Dave's lights are going crazy over there. What's going on over there? You having like a disco party?
Somebody rang the front door.
Oh. Awesome. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think there's definitely a continued move to put workloads in the cloud, but there's got to be still plenty of use cases where that's not possible, where a server makes sense, right? Particularly in certain niches, right? Or certain
the question is, what percentage of market share is the more interesting? Like, again, I don't want to be dismissive of all the use cases, and many of those edge use cases happen to be very profitable, right? So I'm not dismissing that. What I'm also looking at is I'm looking at a general market trend and saying those edge use cases, those particular times when an SMB will put hardware on-prem, that is a rapidly decreasing space. and so we just have to understand the market reality. And I say this to our listeners, those providers, integrators, service providers that are looking at this, like, look, I'm not saying those aren't great offerings. I'm saying you got to look at matching your customer to their needs, and you need to know edge use cases continue to diminish in terms of the way that we're looking at on-prem hardware.
Does that change in a future that's largely AI based? Do you need more edge processing? I don't know if these qualify as edge servers, but I guess they could be used in that capacity. But do you think there's going to be more need for that kind of processing on-prem as we go to more AI models? Or do you think all that's
I really don't. I mean, and by the way, I want to give this as a tip of the hat to chip manufacturers and hardware manufacturers. Like, we're getting chips are interesting again, right? Chips haven't been interesting in a long time. That competitive space is kind of interesting right now as they all hash it out. But we have way more compute in most places than we actually need. in most, again, generalized most scenarios, we generally have so much compute power that how much more do we need? It's more about doing more with what we've got. Oh, and by the way, a lot of that gets offloaded back into the cloud anyway.
Interesting. Yeah, I suppose in another 10 years, on the 40th anniversary of the IBM server, we might see a new line of products, and there'll be like 3 SKUs instead of 50. So you never,
or there may be interesting, but there may be also that I could actually see 100 very specialized bits, right? Because lots of interesting workloads have moved into very specialized, dedicated clouds or custom kind of environments. I could see it going the other way. I want to say, like, again, this isn't that we're saying that these vendors are forever, relegated to relics of the past. It's like, no, the world just changes the way we're deploying this stuff.
Good, very good insights. Rich, anything else to add?
No, I won't belabor the point, but yeah, I'm right there with you, Dave. We actually have an article coming up in the October issue of ChannelPro, which we just put to bed yesterday as we're recording this, about private and hybrid clouds. And yeah, I mean, the overall thrust of the story is it's already mostly about the public cloud. It's headed even beyond that, in that direction. But there is still there will still be use cases where some piece of what a lot of businesses do will be on-prem in a private cloud as a service kind of device. So in terms of the share of the market, not terribly substantial maybe as we go down the road, but that's not disappearing either.
Interesting. Well, good stuff. Well, it's a good line. And folks, we're going to put links to like this article. There's a lot more information in here and links off to go learn about more of this stuff. So if you want to do that, open up the description area on your podcast app, and you'll see the links there to go to these stories. They're also on the show sheet at channelpronetwork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit a lot of the buttons. Don't hit the thumbs down though. You're looking at the thumbs down, but don't do it. This is a thumbs up only show, folks. So hit that thumbs up and the subscribe and the bell, and leave a comment. We always like those as well. So make sure you do that, and leave a comment for Dave. and tell Dave how awesome he is, because Dave needs to hear it each and
Or
every day.
tell me how wrong I am. That's fun too.
Or tell him how wrong he is. You think Dave's wrong? He's ready to battle you in the comments.
Speak up.
area.
It's totally cool.
That's awesome. Guys, well, we're going to move on to our next story. It's about Nile. They're aiming to deliver networking as a service that's truly as a service. So are you saying it wasn't before, Rich?
Well, we're going to get into that because they certainly, that's certainly their argument. I'll give you just a little bit of backstory on this because life doesn't usually work this way, and I love it when it actually does. So last week I was in Washington, D.C. for DattoCon. We talked about that on the show. Last day there, September 14th, I'm about to leave and I go out for breakfast somewhere. I'm reading this really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about a startup that just came out of stealth mode called Nile, and they're doing network as a service. And the more I'm reading about it, the more I'm thinking, this sounds really interesting to me. I've got to figure out how to get in touch with these people and learn more about it. And like literally in the 5 minutes it took me to walk from this restaurant back to my hotel room, an email landed in my inbox from Nile's PR person saying, hey, by the way, we just launched a company. We have a partner program. Do you want to talk with us about it? And it was like, yeah, actually, were you spying on me or something? It was too perfect. I had that conversation with their chief revenue officer yesterday, and this really is a very interesting company. So it's called Nile. It was co-founded by John Chambers, that's a very familiar name to most people out there, former chairman and CEO of Cisco. The other co-founder was Pankaj Patel, another C-level Cisco executive. In the past, they've got $125 million of venture capital that they've raised already, even though they've really only been in the market for a week at this point. 40 patents that they either hold or have pending. So their thesis, and I'll actually quote this because if you want to know, well, why does the world need another networking company? They have a particular take on that. And this is a quote from Lou Serlenga, the chief revenue officer, quote, networks are too costly, they're too complex, they aren't cloud, and they're inherently insecure. And they say we're going to change all of that. So we can come back to costly because that gets right to the as a service thing. In terms of complex, they've been working on this product line, and it is an all new product line, people. This is their own hardware, their own software, their own cloud-based operating platform. They've built it all from scratch, from the ground up, to meet their idea of what the network of today and beyond needs to be. And one of the things it needs to be, they believe, is extremely simple to deploy, simple to maintain. You want to have as much AI in there. You want it to be running itself as much as possible. And so they say this product will more or less configure itself, monitor itself, patch itself, performance optimize itself. It'll deploy upgrades itself. There is a multi-tenant management interface that an MSP who's selling this to their company can look at to keep an eye on what it's actually doing and how the company is performing against its SLAs. We'll get back to that quickly. There's also a self-serve portal. So if you do co-managed IT, you can empower your customer to do some of this on their own. There's plenty of zero trust security built in to the system, because if you're developing something new these days, you're going to do that for sure. Let's get to the cost issue, though, and this whole idea of being truly as a service. And I'll go ahead and quote Lou Serlenga again. He says, most as a service solutions are not really as a service solutions. They're complex leases that bundle up a bunch of technology and then offer it to a customer in some type of an operating expense. And he's talking really about network as a service. Most network as a service solutions, Nile believes, are really just kind of leases that have been adapted to the as a service model. And as I was talking with him yesterday, I was thinking about a session we did at one of our in-person events. This is 2018, 2019, but the topic was, managed everything. How do you offer managed everything? We had some really smart MSPs on stage, and they talked a lot, and they got a lot of questions from the audience about this issue. It's like, if you're going to do network as a service, there is a lot of hardware involved in that. How do you finance that? How do you, how do you do that without putting a big financial dent into your company? How do you pass that along to the customer without turning them off? That issue goes away with Nile, because there is no cost whatsoever for any of the hardware or the software or anything else. There is a subscription, a per user subscription that you pay every month, every quarter, every year, depending on which one you choose. but everything, including the hardware that comes with the solution, is included in that subscription fee. So there are no upfront costs for the end user or the MSP to deal with. And as new, better technology comes along, that just arrives and you put it in place and it's included. There's no extra charge for any of that. You're never going to have that conversation with your customer again about, okay, your stuff is due for a refresh. It's been 3 years, 5 years, whatever. It just kind of runs, and you just kind of keep benefiting from the upgraded technology as it becomes available. They sell exclusively through partners. They put a big emphasis on simplicity with the platform. They put a similar emphasis on simplicity with their partner program. There is only one tier. There are basically no entry requirements. You get all of the usual sort of enablement stuff to kind of learn about how to sell this and how to support it and so on. You get, as a partner, a share of the recurring revenue that they are collecting. I don't know how big a share. I asked, they didn't want to say, but they characterize the margins that you get as quote unquote very, very rich. They wanted to make the make this as attractive as possible, basically, for MSPs to get into. And it makes sense for them to want to make this attractive because, again, there are some impressive names associated with this company, but it is a brand new company. Networking is a pretty critical function for your businesses. So everything I just described sounds really interesting. Now we have to see, does it work the way they say it does? Can they follow through on the promises that they're making about the solution? But this will be a very interesting company to watch. From my perspective, super curious to get Dave's perspective. If you were going to build a networking platform from the scratch today, it would look a whole lot like this.
I love this. I love this in so many ways. Like it's the, so, because I use this premise of like, if I was starting a fresh provider today, okay, now I'm done. Sign up, use their stuff. I have solved my entire network, the entire stack, the whole thing. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to know anything. I don't have to keep up with anything. I just do the whole thing for me. I'm done. I can focus my time on consulting. I can on business advising, on work layer stuff, on like there's just so much of this that you like can go like, oh yeah, that's what I want. I want it just, they've converted hardware into a proper service. And it is his comment of what was wrong really resonated, because I've thought of all the hardware as a service conversations we've had before. And Rich, you and I both know there are all these complicated relationships with distributors and leasers, and it's all this mix that you have to get into, and you have to roll it and roll your own. And this just solves it all. 100%. It's got to do what it says on the tin. It's got to get, people have got to test it and such. But you look and go, yeah, I totally love this premise. And again, if you're a business, if you think of this from a new business perspective, wow, that's so appealing. And we were talking on the last one, 80% of workloads in the cloud by 2025, right? Think about starting new business acquisitions, starting businesses that have all been started in the last 2 to 3 years. They're all cloud forward. And this is just the logical next step of that. Love this. Super excited to see it enter the market.
One of the interesting things about this, Dave, when I was doing this interview yesterday, the segment of the market that they said they're really going to focus in on, and this technology scales all the way down, all the way up. This is very much SMB appropriate, but they're really going to, it sounds like, concentrate their sales efforts on the mid-market right now, and then kind of move up to bigger businesses from there. And from my perspective, the massive opportunity for these guys is in SMB.
This is SMB. I'm thinking the same thing.
In these big environments, it's like they have a complex, set of facilities and architectures, and they're probably kind of persnickety about the hardware that they use and so on. And you're really going to have to make a sale. You're really going to have to persuade them to put something in like this. But to your point, like a smaller business that just wants to, is recently launched and just wants to get the networking going, or an existing SMB business that, very simple, straightforward environment, straightforward needs. All they want is reliable, secure, high performance connectivity that they can pay for as a service, because they want everything as a service. And that's what this is. Just sign here, and you're never going to hear me your technology partner talk to you about routers again. It's just not going to be a conversation. And I know it's a conversation you don't want to have. Sign this and you'll never have it again.
You're done. Yeah, and again, and this is, I know I'm going to make every consultant, SMB consultant angry. They're all the same. All the SMBs are all exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing. They need a network. It needs to be segmented a little bit. It needs to have some basic security. It needs to be kept up to date. They're all the same. They are not special flowers. You could do this over and over and over again, and a single org like this could scale really well and apply the same policies, procedures across the whole thing. And let's call it out, the true promise of a managed service at scale, when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of devices, you can do something really with it that most typical providers will never be able to achieve. Love it.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the billing side, because they bill per user, right? So there's a lot of things that live on a network that are not a user, or are they billing by device? Like, how does that work?
So when you sign up for service with them, and this is actually an interesting piece of things that we didn't get into. I hinted at the SLAs and didn't talk about them. Basically, what happens when you're setting up the service is you set some targets with them. And this is you, the MSP, alongside Nile with the customer, and you set some targets in terms of coverage and capacity and performance. And then they figure out what it's going to cost them to deliver that to you. And they charge you on a per user basis, so that if you're adding or removing users, even if you're in an annual contract, they will adjust over time as that's going on. But as I understand it, it is a flat per user. That's what they call consumption, is how many users are consuming this service that you're getting from us.
It's a lot. I think it's a logical bundling. Like, it's really the only one that it ends up making a lot of sense at volume, at scale, from a simplicity perspective. If you try and get into device, gets too messy, right? Because different users and different kinds of devices and stuff like that. It's really just the simple answer to it. I'm sure there's complexity, and that they are abstracting away, and they've just modeled enough that over enough of growth, they can figure out what the averages are to make it all work.
Gotcha. Interesting. That might be the reason for the mid-market push too, is because it's one deal and a lot more users, and that's what they're billing by, as opposed to SMB, which you might strike a network deal, but an SMB could be 10 users.
Yeah.
So maybe not as profitable in the beginning, but I agree. I think over the long haul, like most things, the SMB market is huge. It's just that there's a lot more to sell, and a lot more to sell too, and it's a lot more hardware to dole out in the beginning. But it's a very interesting company, Rich. It's a really cool model. And yeah, I think we're going to hear more about these folks and keep an eye on what they're doing. I'm always curious about the hardware to go see what it looks like, but they don't really have like the hardware on the website. I was kind of disappointed. But they have everything. They've got their own switches, their own wireless access points. They do the whole thing top to bottom.
And it doesn't surprise me in a way that they don't have like technical specs on the hardware. You can see a picture, of some of that stuff, but yeah, they don't want the conversation to be about the hardware. It's like that's incidental to what they're doing, I think, from their perspective.
But what if you really like
right? If it works, yeah, if it works, I mean, like ultimately most, and again, put the end business owner's hat on. Does it work? Does it solve my problem? Is it as fast as it should be? Ship me one.
Sign me up.
Sign me up.
Very cool. Well, interesting stuff. Good story. Dave, any other last thoughts before we move on to the next story?
No, let's wait to see. Right now, we got to see them perform.
Now we got to see them perform. So we've got another very brief mention, Rich. There is a large company that lots of people know who are filing paperwork for an IPO. Tell me about that.
Yeah, if you were paying close attention to the IT news late on Monday, you may have noticed stories showing up online basically about the fact that Ingram Micro has filed confidentially for an IPO, which is interesting because they were just acquired by private equity 14 months ago. So, why are they on the IPO market? And I'll kind of cut to the chase in a sense. I can kind of speculate a little bit about what's going on here and what it means and so on. But I think in terms of what it means for their partners, for the resellers and so on who do business with them, I don't think it's going to mean very, very much. I mean, anytime you hear about a company getting a vendor or distributor getting acquired or going public, people start to, worry a little bit. Is this going to disrupt how things work with them? And nobody could interview Ingram about this because it's a confidential filing with the SEC. They're not talking about it. But I know, having interviewed, Paul Bay, their CEO, and a bunch of other people a bunch of times in recent years, I know what they would say, which is, we have had a strategy for how we're going to support our partners, how we're going to grow the business. The sale to private equity didn't change that. This isn't going to change that. Basically, they've been on a course for a while. And so I don't expect this IPO, when it happens, to have much impact on partners.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Channel Pro Weekly is not a place where you get sound investing advice, but Dave, is this a buy?
Who knows? It's I am, not a stock advisor on this kind of stuff. I'm Rich. I'm 100% with you. And like, tactically, for any partner, literally, they just filed. We don't even have dates. It's not going to happen for a couple of months at the earliest, maybe a year. Like, who knows, right? And then you've got the standard, like, how long that'll take, and a standard management stuff, and they're all going to have times to make their money and all of that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's the slow moving Zamboni in the Austin Powers movie. Like just don't spend any time worrying about this. I hope they all make tons of money, right? Like, it's like, good for them. But I would tell most people just not to spend any time worrying about it. Is it a buy? I don't know, like, tech's down in general right now. By the way, we can pick on them. The managed services companies that have gone out specifically have not been buys. Those have not been great investments. But the flip side of that whole statement from is that they always say, like, when things are down, those are things on sale. So now might be a time to put money into the market. Do I think there'll be a rebound? Yes. Do I think Ingram's a solidly run company? Yes, I do. And if you believe in the foundations of the business and can dive into that, then it should perform over time. And we have track records of distributors being on the market. So you should have historical data if you're interested in digging into this. But for the typical IT services company, MSP, don't spend any time worrying about it. If you want to worry about it from a financial buy perspective, knock yourself out.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll cover more about this when they actually, when it actually happens. But yeah, you're right, Dave. This could be a year down the road, or more, even in some cases.
Or more,
so,
who knows? Right.
So, and well, I mean, who knows? Something might change too. It could get withdrawn, right? They don't need, just because you file confidentially, which they've issued a press release about filing confidentially. So it's really not that confidential.
The irony is thick.
The irony is thick. But I mean, they could change their minds at any time and not do it. So all possible. Rich, any other thoughts?
You know what? I'm really quickly, I saw a very interesting analysis, and very speculative, but Moody's published some thoughts about this. And basically, Ingram, according to Moody's, has $4.2 billion of debt right now. Debt's very expensive. So all this is probably is Ingram trying to raise some money to get rid of some of that debt. Moody's is speculating that, we're talking an IPO, but Moody's figures they'll probably sell 25% of the company, raise a couple of $1 billion, cut that debt in half. And that, I think it's a very plausible thesis that they've got there. And that's probably really all we're talking about here.
Probably. And then we could even play the game of, like, 3 years after that, does PE buy it back and take it private again and do some more work? And I mean, again, you can play lots of games with this. We need beers in front of us for the for the level of fun of that.
Well, and so that's an interesting question. So I think interest rates are going to have a little bit to say about what happens with what private equity does in the coming age. So do you think, just putting your speculative hat on, as debt becomes more expensive, are we going to see less private equity activity or more sell-offs? Thoughts?
Maybe, but it's so hot that a reduction doesn't feel like it would be that massively painful. There's been so much private equity money and so much movement on those fronts that even just to say, like, okay, that slows a little bit, doesn't feel like it would be enough slowdown to worry. That would be my take. Okay.
Good thoughts. Rich, any thoughts?
No, I think we've said what we need to say. I think this is going to be an interesting issue for investors and Wall Street, and it's not something that that most channel pros need to be paying too much more attention to.
Agreed. So let's move on to what's it for news, but we got a couple stories that we wanted to talk about. One hit the site, and it was about environmental sustainability and whether that's a win-win or not. Rich, I think this has your name attached to it, so tell us about this.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep this quick too, I think, Matt, just in the interest of time, and we'll move on to the next story here. But yeah, I did have an issue in the September issue of Channel Pro that we call the Environmental Sustainability Win-Win, because big companies like Cisco and Dell and HP, they have all, and this has been going on for years, this isn't even all that new. Many of these companies have embraced sustainability initiatives. They've set targets and made commitments. Cisco, for example, wants to be net zero emissions, carbon emissions on everything they do, everything they make, everything they ship by 2040, which is actually a pretty ambitious goal to hit. And they're beginning to do some things to encourage partners. Companies like Cisco are doing things to encourage partners to be a part of that effort. And what's gradually happening for that reason and for other reasons is that I think partners are discovering that climbing on board the sustainability train, if you will, is not only the right thing to do for the planet, which it absolutely is, but it can be a great thing to do for your business for a number of different reasons. So at Cisco, they earlier this year introduced what they call their environmental sustainability specialization. We won't get into the details, but they have a take back and reuse program. If you're selling new Cisco gear to somebody, rather than just kind of dump the old stuff somewhere, you send it back to Cisco. They either refurbish it or recycle it and so on. To encourage partners to be a part of that, they created the specialization, which is very easy to get. This is a very easy credential to earn. And if you've got it, you can get up to 7 incremental discount points on that new stuff that you buy. So all of a sudden now you're making more money, but you're either making buying new stuff more attractive to your customer, or you're adding some more margin to your bottom line. Either way, there's some hardcore, some concrete ROI attached to doing the right thing from a sustainability perspective. To an increasing extent, and this is happening much faster in Europe than it's happening here, but it's definitely starting to happen here as well. More and more often, you're seeing businesses include some kind of recycle, refurbish, responsible disposal clause in a request for proposal. You know, if you're not doing something like that, you might miss out on deals. If you are leading edge on that and you include that in your proposal and the people you're competing against aren't, that could give you a competitive edge. Hiring, very difficult right now, still in the industry. A lot of younger workers out there want to go to work for a company that takes environmental responsibility seriously. If that becomes part of how you do business, it gives you a competitive edge in the hiring market. So a lot of reasons to kind of dive into the story a little bit here, read more about it, read how you can make money, get other business advantages for your company by getting into sustainability. It's not just a brand image enhancement or environmental responsibility story anymore. It's also a growth story.
Interesting. Well, I'd be remiss not to at least get Dave's initial thoughts or comments.
Yeah, just, I mean, a quick one. Like I am, you know, Rich, I'm 100% on board with all that stuff. And I'll just observe hard problems are where the best margin is. And as currently as I can tell, climate is one of the biggest problems facing society and the, you know, and our economy. And so I think some of the biggest opportunity is in climate tech and all of the things related to it. So I like big, hard problems. I think anybody that's focusing on that, even the ancillary portions of it, there's a lot of money to be had.
Indeed, and agreed. So with that, we'll put a link to that story in the show notes for you to go check out. So make sure you go and give that a look. I think you'll find it very interesting to check out. Rich, we've got another story, perfecting the QBR. Tell us what that's all about. And I have a feeling it's about perfecting the QBR, but I could be wrong.
It's a good hunch. Your flawless instincts, once again, have steered you in the right direction. This is actually the cover story to our September issue. It's all about the quarterly business review. You know, so perfecting it, I think, is something that MSPs want to do and should want to do. First thing to say about QBRs is you should be doing them, period. There are a lot of companies out there that are not doing it. But this article is going to provide you a lot of information about, why to do it, but also how to do it the right way versus the wrong way. Wrong way, you're not using that time to sell. There is a piece of that conversation that probably should be what Eric Simpson, my podcast co-host on the other show I do, calls road mapping. So what are we going to kind of need to do to help you keep your technology where it needs to be and help you apply technology to grow the business? What are we going to need to do in the next 3 months, 6 months, so on? You want to kind of get that out in front. You want to spend some time collecting feedback, from your customer. How are we doing? Where can we do better? But you really want to spend the bulk of your time having a strategic conversation with this customer and understanding where their pain points are, what their aspirations are, and talking to them about ways that you can help them solve those problems, realize those goals using technology. That's the thing that's really going to cement your value to that customer. Gosh, what else? So, in terms of things that QBRs are not, they are not necessarily quarterly. It's worth pointing out, as people did in the article. I mean, you can be flexible on this. Some customers you can meet with semi-annually, and that's just fine, or once a year, or every other month. The point is to have that touch point with the client on a regular basis. Eric, one of the really interesting points Eric made in the article is this can be a source of profit for you too, and really kind of should be. You're not going to turn this into some major piece of your business, but if your contract with your customers includes a virtual CIO service, this is, that you deliver at a billable rate. This is part of that. Having a strategic conversation 4 times a year with the customer, you are being their virtual CIO. You can absolutely bill them for that. And instead of giving that time away, you're making a little money from that time. Be prepared, have an agenda, think creatively about where you have these meetings. You could, most people will probably have the meeting at the customer site. If you've got some cool new office you just opened, well, maybe invite the customer over to see your cool new office and impress them with that, or find some interesting place that's not anyone's office where you can go and have the meeting there. Because you want to turn the experience of having this meeting into something that is a pleasant experience for everyone involved. It shouldn't be a sales call, and it shouldn't be a painful thing. It should be a chance to have an interesting conversation, technology professional to technology client. So lots of great advice in the story. Dave, you are an ex-MSP. Curious to hear your thoughts about perfecting the QBR.
Well, this is where the core value of a provider is actually going to end up being in the future. So let's even do a callback, right? So Nile's entire value is around eliminating all of the complexity of the technical services delivery to take that problem away. You can easily see how most of the way technology delivery is going to eliminate all of that complexity that most providers have hung their hats on as what their value is. If the answer is really just, well, you need Nile and a couple of other cloud services, what you actually need expertise as an end customer in is understanding how these things come together and drive the business value. How do you deliver that in a business review? Like, that's literally how it works. And I'm 100% with you. Everyone focuses on the Q and not the BR when they talk about this. So you need to focus on the business review. I'll throw out my resource for this. I did a video that's on my channel around delivering business value, and it's called my good, better, best model of it. And the idea is that you want to understand where your value is in the value chain. It's good when you relate it to the P&L if you're helping reduce expenses. That's, you live in the SG&A, and this is all about tying back to the customer's profit and loss statement. They need technology. You help manage it as an expense, that's good. What's better is if you can move into cost of goods sold and you can help impact there. Reducing costs, that's better. But what's best is driving top line revenue, helping the customer execute in a way that drives more sale, that uses technology to drive more sales, more acquisition, more widget selling, more membership, whatever that means, whatever revenue means in their business. Best is tying your technology value to do that. And where is the forum to do all of this work? It's in the BR. And so that's why this is important. is focusing on this space, because ultimately in a cloud first world, your core value as a provider lives in this meeting.
And all QBRs should have donuts. You should bring donuts to your meeting because
It's
people
always
like
a
donuts.
polite thing to do, and people like it when you bring donuts.
Make your QBRs go more smoothly with the power of donuts. I think that's a great advice. There's a lot of actually really good tidbits in here to help improve those business reviews. And Dave, you're 100% right. You got to focus on the BR part, right? And help the customer with what they're doing and look at their needs, and and make sure that your solutions, how would you put are executing, delivering, their
but look, and it ties back to the customer's profit and loss statement. We don't spend enough time talking about what the customer's business goals in, right? They're in the title, guys, business review, but that means the customer's business, and it is the simple P&L. Are you tying into revenue? Are you tying into cost of goods sold? Or are you just living in the expense line item?
Yeah, and Richard, you mentioned when you were kind of talking about this, not to turn it into a sales opportunity. Go into that a little bit more about like how that is a wrong approach for this.
I mean, what you don't want the customer to come away from that meeting thinking is, I sat down with this guy because he wanted to sell me some new application or some new hardware. Like this was a sales call as opposed to a business review, as Dave was saying. What the takeaway from the customer's standpoint should be, these people just care about doing what's right for me. And so they asked me for my feedback. We did talk about the roadmap so that we could kind of understand where we might need to be setting aside budget and preparing to set aside budget. But mostly what we talked about is my business, my aspirations, and how they can help me with that. And one of the things I didn't mention in the article is the person who should be leading that conversation with the customer is the owner of the managed services business or solution provider, whatever. You can bring an account manager along to that meeting, and you probably should if you have one assigned to that account. But they're there to kind of observe and chime in here and there. This should be an owner-to-owner kind of strategic conversation, as opposed to the sort of conversation an account manager is probably going to want to have.
Yeah, and I mean, let me also sort of say, like, the reason it becomes not a sales conversation is if you're sitting with a business owner and you talk about an investment in their business, and if they spend $1 on technology and $2 comes back in revenue, that's not selling. That's helping them grow their business. And every business owner I know, if I told them, if you spend $1 and I will return $2, we'll spend $1. And then you amplify that, put some zeros on that. If you spend $1,000 and back comes $2,000, I will spend that money too, because that's what you want to do to grow your business. And Rich, you're right to say it's the right thing for your business, but it's about hitting their goal. Their goal is to build revenue in their business. How can you make them do that better?
Excellent. Good perspective, good insight. And lots more in this article to read. So make sure you go and you check that out and think about the ways that you can make your QBRs better, especially if you're not doing them at all. You clearly should be. Well, Rich, this is a good time to take a short break. And when we come back, we're gonna go to an interview that we did with Shannon. Hold on, I'll make sure I get Shannon Murphy. She's the chief marketer at Zomentum, and Dave Sutton, the managing director at Wingman Marketing. They did a growth survey, so we're gonna go and check that interview out and talk about that. Really interesting stuff. We recorded this a little earlier, so we're gonna put that here, and it's really good. So you want to make sure you listen to the whole thing, and we'll be back in a minute. Stay tuned. And we are back with part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. More than 125 MSPs shared their plans and expectations with Zomentum and Wingman Marketing in their 2022 growth survey, where they asked about last year's growth, this year's goals and targets, and the strategies in place to keep growing. Now, here to go through some of those results of the survey and what it means is Shannon Murphy, chief marketer at Zomentum, and Dave Sutton, managing director at Wingman Marketing. Welcome, both of you. Let's start with you, Shannon. Tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about Zomentum.
Yeah, so I am the chief marketer at Zomentum. We are a revenue platform for partners and partner programs. And how we're working with MSPs is we've created a sales acceleration suite that really is aimed at making the sales process as friction-free and seamless as possible, and really giving like a human authentic element to it, because we know MSPs are so relationship driven. And I guess maybe like a fun fact about me. So I'm from Massachusetts. I love Boston, lived in the area for a very long time. So maybe a fun fact is like one of my favorite Italian pastries there is called a lobster tail. So maybe you guys think a lobster tail is just a savory sandwich. You can also get a beautiful, crispy, crunchy pastry filled with like this mascarpone cream. And I would definitely recommend it if you're ever in the area.
I was going to ask if it was actually filled with lobster tail, because that would be a very, very odd pastry.
Be like a bit of a mashup. Maybe the world is ready for it now, though.
Well, awesome. Well, welcome. Glad to have you here. Also joining us is Dave Sutton. Dave, tell us a little bit more about you, where you're from, and a little bit more about Wingman Marketing.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, I run Wingman. We're an MSP-focused marketing agency based in the UK. We support MSPs worldwide with their sales and marketing challenges. Just plugging in there to what Shannon said about Zomentum, we kind of sit in front of Zomentum. So we help with the lead generation piece, approaching the market, the audience, the branding, everything that goes around generating new conversations and leads to feed into Zomentum. And then we can support you with that sales process to turn more of those conversations into new customers.
Awesome. And a fun fact about you, it doesn't even have to be pastry related, but it can be if you want it to be.
Usually I'll go to food, but I'll go for a nerdy one. Being called Wingman, everything's got to be aviation themed. I'm a massive aviation nerd, and I'm a private pilot. I fly light aircraft as my hobby. So everything in the business has some kind of aviation spin to it.
Oh, awesome. Well, maybe towards the end of the interview here, I'll get your personal review on the newer Top Gun movie and see if it held up to your standards of aviation. Well, awesome. And Dave, of course, Dave Sobel is still here with us for the interview. Dave, your favorite pastry?
Oh, I'm a sucker for just a cheap donut. Like run up to Dunkin' Donuts and grab me a good donut to go with that coffee every time.
And it doesn't even have to be filled with lobster tails, hopefully.
No, exactly. It doesn't even have to be a seafood related one.
Awesome stuff. Well, we've got a lot to go through and a lot to talk about. I'm so glad everyone's here. I'm sure it's going to be a very engaging and interesting discussion. So why don't I throw this over to you, Shannon, first to tell us a little bit about the survey that you do, how it came about, before we kind of dive into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, if you want to chime in, feel free as well, because actually I should say that this was Dave's idea, surveying MSPs on their growth, their targets, and what, I guess, how they were setting goals for the coming year and trying to scale their businesses appropriately based on what they were seeing historically. So we kind of divided it into several parts where we were assessing past, present, and future, of course, but also sales, marketing, and maybe other factors of the business like operations, service, and anything that could essentially be a bottleneck for growth, right? How are they making investments either in resources from a personnel perspective, technology and services, or even totally lost my train of thought there, but just really like, how are they going to solve those problems? Because I think bottlenecks in those different areas are what can keep businesses from growing.
Yeah, I think just to add there, with COVID finally settling down at the time that we were sort of putting the survey together, we wanted to see how MSPs had changed their focus, whether COVID had provided an opportunity for them to pivot and decide to grow their business. Obviously, the channel has been quite buoyant and healthy because of the drive, the adoption for new technologies. So it felt like the right time, along with people like Shannon and myself, pushing a lot more education on sales and marketing to MSPs, among many other vendors and channel sort of associates and advocates have been helping MSPs with sales and marketing, where I think maybe 2 to 3 years ago, there was almost nothing in the way of education going out to MSPs to help them address sales and marketing. And I know it's a challenge that everyone has had for forever. I mean, 10 years ago, it gave me the idea for the agency that took me a number of years to eventually start. Yeah, it just felt like the right time to go out and ask everyone how they felt, what challenges they were having, and what they were going to do moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, sales and marketing is like a perennial. We do a lot of coverage, a lot of writing about sales and marketing, and we talk about it a lot at events because it is a perennial topic of interest to our readers. And truthfully, I don't see a part of what I really loved about the study is I don't see a lot of studies like this out there that specifically dive into sales and marketing. Let's start with where you just left off, Dave, which is COVID. And you may have kind of hinted at an answer already to this here, but one of the interesting things is that, this is good news, no one, pretty much no one you surveyed entirely halted their sales and marketing spending during the pandemic, despite obviously in 2020 that, there was a slowdown in business for a while. 53% of the MSPs you surveyed actually decided to invest more in sales and marketing last year. 44% of that 53% decided to invest more in sales and marketing specifically because of the pandemic. And 13% of the people you surveyed started investing in sales and marketing for the first time ever because of the pandemic, which is just interesting to me. So, I mean, either of you, both of you, what was it about the pandemic that actually motivated a large hunk of the MSPs out there to hit the gas and spend more on sales and marketing than they did before?
I think that there's a combination of factors. The main one, I believe, sort of reading between the lines, I guess, because we didn't get a specific answer on that perhaps, but from what I know has been happening in the industry, I think it was sort of thrive or die to a degree. MSPs had to up their game to tackle the demands from their clients, to pivot their operations and rely more on tech, especially the driver for remote working. When we look at the uptake in people using Zoom and Teams and things like that, it was a case of we have to serve these clients' needs or they're going to go elsewhere. So a lot of businesses, a lot of MSPs that had sort of been able to tick along for a long time, being fairly constant, suddenly had to up their game in a very short space of time to respond to a need from all of their clients at once, which I suppose is something that would so rarely ever happen. So that, I think, is the main driver for me. I think they were forced to up their game. And I guess to a degree, when the dust settled on that transition, and MSPs then had more time on their hands, as a lot of businesses furloughed staff, the help desk demands started to ease as people got used to remote working. I think they had time, like everyone in business, to actually reflect internally on what they were doing within their own business, because there was a lot less noise going on externally, because everything, kind of grinding to a halt. So I think it was kind of right time, right place, just having the brain capacity and sort of being forced to do it, that made them sort of up their game and start marketing.
Yeah, I would say, like, simply put, the opportunity for digital transformation, right? There were so many circumstances in which small businesses were embracing new and different types of technology to help them bridge that gap and still have communication and interaction with their customers, right? I mean, we couldn't stand like at a counter within 6 feet of each other, right? So how are these SaaS solutions going to help enable our businesses, as Dave alluded to, even all of the Zoom meetings that we're all on a regular basis? And then I think something else to consider too, beyond the digital transformation and the embrace from SMBs, is also the way in which MSPs would sell. We think that often case, like Dave and I talk about this sometimes, is being very dependent on word of mouth and connections within your community versus hunting for new business. And if you can be out in your community, going to chamber events, interacting with your fellow business owners on a regular basis, that makes sales a lot easier. But if all of that is shut down, potentially having to embrace digital marketing methods to create more awareness for yourself on a regular basis. And we saw that with Zomentum. Our product launched in 2020. That could have been horrible for us, right? And we grew very fast and quickly through that because we saw that MSPs were willing to embrace digital sales methods versus kind of the old drive by and stop in.
You know, intuitively, you would assume the companies that did invest or invest more in sales and marketing have been the ones that have done best in the last couple of years. I don't know if that's in the study or elsewhere. I mean, can you folks kind of quantify? Is there data that shows the companies in that substantial portion of MSPs out there who did up their sales and marketing game are the ones who kind of came out ahead?
Yeah, I think there's still mixed feelings, I think, from the stats that we had. Some perhaps it being too early to tell because of such an incredibly long tail sales process that MSPs have with winning new customers, because it's such a considered decision. And of course, contract lengths and things like that, meaning that clients can't make a switch as instantly as they can with many other commoditized product sales out there, that a lot were taking time, I think, to realize the benefit of sales and marketing. And in fact, I think, Shannon, the point that I guess we reflected on quite a lot was the barrier to growth. A lot said, we're investing more, we want to grow, we're seeing this acquisition of net new customers as the future for our business, but then actually recruiting staff and servicing those customers might be a massive bottleneck to it. So I think there's kind of optimism with some caution thrown in there, which I think is probably pretty standard from the MSP community. We don't want to be too optimistic. We want to be careful and cautious.
Yeah, Rich, we weren't able to say necessarily, and this is an improvement for next year, of course, to say, okay, of those that are investing in growth, how can we then take that subset and look at look specifically at their growth? But to Dave's point, 62% of them said that their growth in 2022 would be from net new customers. But again, rife with irony, because then there was, I want to say maybe like 42% weren't able to kind of see sustained growth long-term, like over 6 months. Like they did not know what 6 months from now looked like. And so that was concerning, that there was a lot of optimism. But at the time that we were putting out the report, like that 6 months is now. Like I was cautioning our audience to say, okay, 6 months from now, guys, is mid-September. So what are our actual targets and how are we going to sustain this growth long term and actually make it through the year?
So I'm going to dive in with a follow-up because, Rich, your line of reasoning and mine were some of the same ways. That's why we like chatting on these things. Did your survey give any insights into percentages of revenue or amount increases? So one of the things we've seen historically, and if I'm referencing like service leadership's data on performance here, typically, most IT service providers spend only about 3% of revenue on marketing, which is way below like actual average businesses, which are spending sort of 8 to 10, and then startups that'll be in the 15 to 20% even on sales and marketing. So if a typical IT services company is only spending 3%, and then they say, oh, we're increasing it, but it's only increased to 4%. Okay, that's a trivial amount, right? It's not actually really putting the accelerator on. So did the survey, even the survey data or your interviews, give any insights into kind of proportions of revenue spent here?
We did not have proportions, which is something that we could potentially ask for. I think initially, Dave, jump in on this and let me know, but I think at certain points when we were talking about percentage of budget, we were a little bit concerned that, Dave represents a marketing agency. I represent a sales platform. We're asking about your budgets. Does that come across looking like very self-serving? But maybe I think that's a great way to approach it, of what percentage of your revenue are you currently investing in sales and marketing, and how will that modify?
Yeah, that is a different take. Yeah, Shannon said we didn't want to get the actual figures, so we've kind of worked on percentages. I mean, looking back at 2021, 50% said that their revenue sources were from net new business, and the same, 44% of those, as we said, kind of invested more in marketing. So, kind of reading between the lines of, there's almost half of MSPs said that they grew from acquiring net new business, and roughly half, just under half, have invested more in marketing. So there's a lot of patterns like that through the report that sort of aren't married up to say they're exactly the same people, but the patterns kind of suggest that those that invested more have shown some growth because of it.
So here's something out there. There are a lot of different insights in different areas on the report. This is one that jumped out at me that I think a lot of folks in our audience will identify with maybe a little bit, which was that you found over half of the MSPs you surveyed, they're obviously doing sales and marketing, but they don't have, quote, formalized and tangible targets, end quote, for those activities, which then kind of, begs the question, well, what are they basing their sales and marketing on, and how are they measuring success on that? What do you see out there?
A lot, I think, is a case of we know we need to get going with something, and a lot set, I think, an arbitrary target in their head of where they would like to be. And I think during COVID, maybe there was some people experience a false positive with a boost in revenue that might have been driven by projects that would tail off again once COVID settled down. Others have been growing consistently, 10, 15% year on year. And I think where they're feeling that those referral sources are starting to dry up, their gut feel is, well, we would just like to continue to grow as we have been, but I realize we're not going to do that through referral sources anymore. So let's spend some money to try and still grow at the same rate that we have been. I think is a very informal, sort of gut feel driven way that most of them are looking at marketing. But a lot, at least from our direct experience, will make modest investments initially in marketing to feel some return before then scaling that investment. Very few will go all out with a big budget to try and acquire and hit a particular target. So most, I think, know they've got a modest budget, so therefore they don't really put a formal target to it, which isn't necessarily the right way to go about it. But I can understand the caution for anyone that's new to trying sort of proactive marketing with an actual dollar spend for the first time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does end up being gut instinct, and I can even speak to that in my 15 or so years working with SaaS businesses. Again, like sometimes it's just they're going at it from a gut versus statistics. But this was something that was actually pretty exciting to Dave and I to say, okay, Dave has a really great way of counseling his clients to say, well, how many seats are we looking to acquire in the coming, say, 3-6 months, end of year? What is the value on that, so that we understand like what is the projected revenue that we're trying to attain? And then, kind of like simple sales solution, working it back from then, therefore, how many leads do we need to be getting in the door? And what does that look like from an investment based upon who you're working with for lead generation services, whatever it may be, different channels of marketing with ads or social media, maybe agencies, or even like cold calling, right? However you're getting those leads through the door, then putting like a cost of customer acquisition on that.
Yeah, and you may have just answered something that I wanted to ask about, because I suspect in a lot of cases, some of the insights in this report stem from the fact that people don't really know how to do something, or don't know how to get started on something. So a lot of the reason why many MSPs don't have formalized sales targets is they don't quite know how to set those targets realistically. Is the process you just described now, is that kind of the way to do it? Is just to kind of set a goal for how rapidly you want to grow the company, and then kind of work back from that in terms of what you're going to spend, and what your rate of return, what it typically costs you to get a lead and turn it into a customer, et cetera?
Yeah, exactly that. I think it's good for most MSPs that work regionally, there are so many businesses that exist within a region. They then need to think realistically, how many of those businesses am I going to engage in my process? How many of them am I going to have conversations with and turn into leads? And because data, wonderful data these days, we can get visibility of number of employees, gives us a feel for the number of seats. If we then look at, we want to grow by 10, 20% of revenue, what does that look like in monetary terms? What does that look like per seat? If the average is, say, $1,000 a seat per annum, we then know how much each seat is worth to us and how many seats we need to get to hit the target, as Shannon said. And then when we compare that to the market of how many seats exist locally that we could try and pick up, what percentage of those do we need based on like our conversion rate? Will we close 1 in 3, 1 in 6? It all adds up then to simple seat math to help us figure out a target that is attainable, really. And then what budget should we put to try and achieve that?
Did your survey have any sense of the way strategies are breaking down between for acquisitions and marketing tactics? The difference between referrals versus digital advertising versus sort of event-based strategies. Did you have get any data on the breakdowns there of what's working and what's not?
We did not. That was sort of a gap that we clarified later. So when we did present in a live webinar, we actually surveyed our attendees there live on the line about what kind of, what marketing channels that they were most interested in investing. We felt like there's a lot of confusion as to what are you desiring, but kind of is like a black box to you. And it was a high percentage came out winning around video marketing, first and foremost, and then also LinkedIn tactics. So that actually inspired me to do the whole LinkedIn series where we had some different influencers on talking to our MSPs about how to kind of bring in that process and in-mail and have that be a nice sales flow with prospects, but also how to use Sales Navigator. I think video marketing, and actually, I'd be interested to hear from everybody here, what you're thinking about for MSPs there, and how they can kind of debunk it. Because I think that that's a huge area of interest and opportunity for them.
I think there's a huge opportunity in newspaper print, black and white advertising. I think they should look there.
Ever forward thinking there, Matt. You're cutting edge. And I'll go the other side, because I've published material on this saying that I think one of the big unexplored regions is direct e-commerce. That MSPs are underutilizing the ability to sell directly through their website, not a contact form, not a book a meeting, actually setting up a shop, right? Yes, an actual online shop to buy and sell services is as far as I can tell is woefully underrepresented in the market space.
Yeah, for sure. I love that though. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. That's interesting you mentioned that, Dave. Funnily enough, earlier today, I was having a conversation with someone around the MSP space becoming ever more commoditized and it becoming, I guess, like a SaaS business. It is a subscription. And on the sort of help desk piece, you're signing up for, I guess, insurance in a way against downtime. And then there's the sort of VCIO piece that there's a lot of movement on now for MSPs to offer sort of the aspirational side of helping them to get more from tech. Again, can become a sort of commoditized subscription because we're all used to that Netflix world now, aren't we, of signing up credit card details and so much per month comes out of the account.
Well, you can spin up bank accounts, you can buy insurance, you can buy homes, you can buy cars, you can buy. I mean, I look at this and say it seems obvious to me that I should be able to both book consulting, like direct consult, prepaid book consulting. I should be able to buy network assessments. Everyone talks about network assessments. Why can't I book and schedule it right from your website? Prepay credit card, your favorite machine configurations. Like, this is our tried and tested one. I should be able to buy that on your website. All the way to, as you sort of outlined, Dave, it makes sense to me. You could buy your core premium managed service. If it's ready to go, customer could buy it on their website. Seems like an obvious opportunity that is super underutilized.
Okay. But if everyone started doing that, right, then what is the differentiator? Because I feel that often when I'm speaking with MSPs, that they want those conversations with their clients because the expertise is how they differentiate, so that they don't have to compete on lowest price.
I look forward to them having that problem.
Yeah,
like,
what I mean by that is, and then we can talk about.
Well, right, that is so far out that let's not, like, right now, no one's doing it, right? If you're a customer and you're looking for IT services and you go read everybody's websites, they all look the same, and they all require everyone to either make a phone call or fill out a form and wait for a call back. That's not how people buy, and so not in 2022. So why not be the better one? And I look forward to having the problem where everyone's website looks like that.
Yeah,
that'll be a wonderful day in 20 years.
I'm right there with you, Dave. I actually did an article for the magazine just recently about online marketplaces. And some of the conversation there was about, participating in the Azure marketplace or AWS and so on. But some of it was about creating a marketplace, an e-commerce site on your website. And there are not a lot of people who are doing that right now. The people who are kind of leading edge. And you and I, we both know Jay McBain from Canalys,
Yep.
great analyst, really well, and he's talking a lot about marketplaces these days, because there will come a time soon when the MSPs who are not offering that, Amazon-like marketplace kind of experience on their website are just going to kind of get left behind.
Don't think that I'm saying you want to put every single SKU imaginable and make a massive. You are not Amazon. But what I'm saying is that there is a digital buying process that almost every website offers now, but it seems IT services have chosen not to. I think that's an opportunity.
Wouldn't the first person who does that be at somewhat of a disadvantage though? Because if you're going to throw your price list online, it seems like your competitors could just easily leverage that against. So
I challenge anyone to type into Google, how much does managed services cost? And then tell me that prices aren't online. I just like that is a 15-year-old argument, and it's like, even by the way, every vendor in this space has pricing guides. So don't tell me that customers can't find those too using the amazing power of Google. Like,
they want you to fill out a form again, Dave. It's the inbound marketing that you're over.
Yeah, but that isn't how buyers work now. And I think, and I mean, a buyer haven't worked that way in a while. So this is an industry that's, for being leading on tech, is way behind on actual delivery of online commerce.
So Dave was asking before, and just by the way, Matt, it occurs to me, there are 4 guys in this interview, 2 of whom are named Dave. Should we just be honorary Daves for the next few minutes and just simplify things?
The world always needs more Daves.
That'll make the conversation far easier to follow.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh. That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Dave was saying, and then it's just.
So one of our Daves was asking, like, where does the money go? What tactics are most used? And there was some data in here that might offer a hint, because word of mouth came up before. So 70% of the people you surveyed said that they have sales and marketing activities ongoing, but only 39% of those regard those marketing programs as, quote, live and proactive. So what does that say about the kinds of sales and marketing activities that people are chiefly relying on right now? And I'll just kind of jump ahead a little bit. I mean, what are the pros and cons of not, doing sales and marketing, but not in a live, proactive way?
Yeah, I was keen to get that question in to understand from those that feel as though they have some low-level, low-cost like almost canned content. You know, there's a lot of canned content services around using vendor marketing, something that they feel clearly doesn't have enough value and isn't really delivering much return. Hence, they didn't consider it live and proactive. Versus those that are actually doing personalized marketing that's aimed at the audience, that's engaging prospects in conversations, and is relevant to the challenges that their customer base are actually having right now. That, I think, was the key differentiator. Those that are just doing marketing because they need to dress the shop window with something and they need to change that regularly should anyone come looking. Perhaps those that rely upon the website more as a oh yeah, that business does exist. You know, they are legitimate because they're just going on the website not to find the supplier, but they've been passed them through referral on the website. They're just using to vet them versus those that are actually using marketing to acquire net new leads from cold that otherwise wouldn't have come across their business otherwise.
Yeah, I think there's activities, and then kind of how I interpret this too is like who's doing those activities, right? So we didn't get to dig in this, or maybe we need to define this further for the respondents next year, but like live and proactive, I would imagine is also our survey respondents saying, do I have somebody who's actually is marketing in their title, or am I working with an agency? Is there actual activity happening proactively and somebody owns this, not just, you know, like, yeah, we can be all over social media, but if there's not a strategy and somebody owning that. So I that's how I also kind of interpret live and proactive, Rich.
Well, one of the things I really appreciate about the study is you guys present the data, you analyze the data, but you also shared some suggestions on how to act on the data. And in this particular part of the report, there were some concrete suggestions in there for people who are wondering what are some, you know, live proactive tactics that they can use in marketing. And I think video actually was in the report. You know, what are some of the suggestions that you would share with folks in the audience?
Oh yeah, I think that came about from the webinar actually. So there's the report, and then I think you probably also read like our key takeaways summary from our webinar. And so based upon the channels that we were asking the live respondents there about, yeah, you know, I have a career in marketing, Dave does. So we thought, okay, these channels that they're surveying that they want some further guidance on, let's just workshop this right now. So I was saying some video marketers that I really enjoy are Pete Matheson and Scotty Miller, both with MSP backgrounds out of the UK. So I think if you're looking for inspiration there, but that whole concept too of like an FAQ or like they ask you answer, you can do like a simple selfie video walking around your community, answering a common question. How often are there questions coming in through your service desk that instead of waiting for them to be a customer, anticipate that and create content for that? And it can be as simple as like a talk to text on your phone or a quick selfie video. How are you going to take those answers? You have the expertise, you're passionate about the subject. You can package that into video. You can easily package that into like an FAQs sheet or a longer blog. But that's like some ways to quickly hack video marketing in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think the informal element around some of the video, somebody just filming on their cell phone, stood in the garden or walking through town or something, has a really nice, raw, sort of fresh element to it that gets across the personality of the business, because most MSPs, as we said earlier, struggle with that differentiator. So given that it's still, as you said, Dave, no one's selling online, it's still a personal sale. People still buy from people, even in this digital age. If the personality within the business that's kind of doing the selling and engaging with prospects is the one that's on video and giving some advice away, then that's a great way to stand apart from all of those vanilla MSPs that don't have pictures of their team or their office or anything on their website. So you've no idea whether they're a one-man shop or a 100-person business. That's a nice raw and fresh way to do it. And another thing for me, I just wanted to add in is picking an industry specialism. We're finding that MSPs that really focus down on the types of businesses, the lookalike criteria of the market that they want to serve, stand a much better chance of getting marketing that will appeal to their customers rather than trying to be all things to all people. We're seeing more and more MSPs now get success by being as specific as just serving dental offices, for example, and nothing but. And a lot of people are so fearful of, oh, that really narrows my market. But actually, the percentage of that market that you can capture is far, far greater if you're the go-to subject matter expert for dentist offices, for example. And it opens up the doors for getting associations with industry bodies and networking events and things like that, because you become the go-to service provider in that space. And that helps shape your whole content strategy. What is the language that that target customer uses in their business, and make sure that you're using that in your marketing and your proposition is shaped around that. There's no other better way to be understood.
Interesting. So we got time for maybe 2 more questions. I'll throw out an easy one, and then Dave, Mr. Dave Sobel, because then we have like 5 Daves on the show right now. So I will ask, if you go through your whole report, what was one really interesting statistic that surprised you, stood out to you, that you would like to highlight that we may not have talked about? Shannon, we'll start with you.
Oh, I guess I already touched on this a little bit. But again, I think that there was a high amount of optimism and kind of a lot of what I like to call nearsightedness in terms of not necessarily having that long-term vision and concrete goals. I think that is something that it'll be really interesting when we do our study for 2023 to see how that panned out, and how we can help the community better create goals versus going off gut. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Dave Sutton, anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think just reflecting back on those that may not consider investing in their growth. 2 elements that were not a surprise, which is the 38% that said they don't know how or where to invest. Still, a lot of MSPs are uncertain and quite rightly don't want to spend any dollars until they've got a plan. And the 22% that have had no success in the past, once bitten, twice shy, as they say. But what was a surprise was 34% that said referral sources increasing. Repeatedly, I hear that that's an area for a lot of well-established MSPs, that's drying up, and therefore they're needing to do something new and exciting to attract new business. So it's interesting that some have perhaps that short-sightedness maybe of, we've had some referrals through, maybe we don't need to do any marketing, but then they'll realize that will soon dry up again. So it's interesting that so many said that would be a reason that would hold them back.
Yeah, interesting. Dave Sobel, any last questions you'd like to ask?
So just you've alluded to it now, Shannon. You sort of implied that there may be a next version of this report. What are you guys thinking about in terms of areas to explore? And I asked not just for your thinking, because if you're thinking about it, the audience probably would be as well, about opportunities to understand more about it. What are you thinking for the follow-up report? Any initial ideas of where you're going to take it?
Well, I do want some consistency with our questions, because I would love to compare that year over year data, right? So I'm kind of a nerd for research methods in terms of like appropriate. Dave learned that collaborating with me in terms of like appropriate scales, not pinning people into like a must answer, right? Because that skews our data as well. So I'd like to keep a lot of the questions fairly consistent, so we have a good year over year and we can continue to repeat this. I am mulling adding a section around how they are utilizing technology and selling new services, SaaS solutions. That's something that I'm interested in from the like growth perspective of how they're, especially when we're talking about marketplaces, because they're using marketplaces too, right? How are they building out breadth in the services that they offer, and how is that impacting business?
Yeah, I think for me, the conversation starters would be nice to know. I think this was very much led by the pandemic, because we were largely looking back at what had happened. And of course, we sort of knew what the drivers were going to be there. But as Shannon said, knowing new services and new offerings, but I think for me, what's the reason that a prospect engages a new MSP? How did you end up in a conversation with a new prospect? Was that because those age-old issues still persist, poor communication, poor responsiveness, lack of proactivity? Or was it the case that people have realized that technology is now an enabler that can add margin to their bottom line, and they're looking for a partner that can offer that strategic service, that VCIO piece that I mentioned? Are people using that now to actually start conversations, and it's less about that routine help desk, day-to-day managed service stuff? I'd like to know whether the conversation is starting to tire on that and is going more strategic yet.
Very good. Very interesting conversation. Lots to dive in. I'm sure we could go longer, but unfortunately we are out of time. But Shannon and Dave Sutton, I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to direct people to where they can go and read the survey, and then how they can connect with you if they've got questions or want to hook up with you about something. Where can they go? How can they do that?
Yeah, on the Zomentum site, if they're interested in the report, it's literally Zomentum.com. Momentum with a Z, if you will, it rhymes. Go to our resources section in our header, and you'll be able to find the MSP growth report there. Feel free to email me at Shannon Murphy at Zomentum.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. I do have a very common name, so put Shannon K. Murphy, and yeah, that's me. I'm happy to always be expanding my network and helping and advising others. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Dave Sutton?
Yeah, thanks. Likewise, we've got some resources on our site. I think two things that people might find useful. We've got a budget calculator and a target calculator. So the numbers that I talked through today, you can put your targets in there and use that calculator to spit out a report that can just help you shape a tangible target, and also a budget that could be realistic to get in place to help you grow. Likewise, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm sure just Google Wingman Dave MSP or something, and you'll probably find me very easily. Yeah, just get in touch via our website.
Oh, and sorry, one more thing to mention when Dave was mentioning other resources besides this one. Zomentum also, we did commissioned an independent research firm, Breton, and recently released another report on SMB buying trends. So we surveyed about 350 SMB IT decision makers, and have been asking about the types of investments that they'll be making. So I think that would be potentially very interesting to MSPs to see where they're making investments.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on and joining us. Hopefully we'll get you back again, maybe next year when you field the survey again, so we can compare the results. I think that would be very fun and very interesting. And a big thanks to Dave Sutton as well for suggesting specialization. And if you're looking to specialize, I think a good niche market that would be easy to market to are pastry chefs that only make lobster tails. Go after those. The marketing messages almost write themselves. So keep that in mind. Big thanks again for coming on. Love having you all here. And we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Dave Sobel will be with us on the other side. We're going to break down the show, have a little bit of fun. You won't want to miss it because you never know what we're going to do. So stick around. We will be right back. And we are back with part 3 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly, coming back from an amazing interview with Shannon Murphy and Dave Sutton on that growth report. Really, really interesting conversation. Lots to think about. Dave, let's start with you. Anything that you took away from that? Anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the continual. I'm going to be pushing this space and IT providers in general to be thinking much more about being disciplined on marketing. We hear too much of the referrals. Yes, that should be the engine of your business. And now you will want to grow more than that. What is beyond that? And don't fall into the trap of thinking that it's the same thing that it's been the past 10 or 15 years. The buyer, Jay McBain talks about the buyer's journey in his pieces. That is very different. We have a younger set of buyers in their 20s and 30s right now that look very different from previous generations of buyers. Put that all together and know that you can go out forth and experiment on trying new things.
Absolutely. So they are the engine of your business, but marketing is the nitrous to your engine, right?
Yep.
I guess you could probably say. Rich, any takeaways from that interview?
Just one thing I kind of want to highlight, that there was a really interesting part of that conversation where we were talking about, setting targets and setting budgets. And there was this idea that, okay, I want, X new customers per quarter, and it's going to cost me Y dollars per customer. And all of that, that's a really great way to approach this. And all of that relies on good data. So whatever, per Dave, you want to be doing these things in a regular, disciplined kind of way, but measure everything, because you want to know what your ROI is on the activities that you do. You want to know how much, how many leads do I convert into customers? What does it cost me to get a lead? What's the lifetime value of a customer, so that I can measure ROI? All that depends on data. So make sure you're collecting good data.
And I'll add to that, because it's also about experiment. This is too many providers go in and think I'm going to do marketing, and they think of it as this one thing I will do this one time with this one budget item. No, it's hundreds of little things that you do, and you test each one, and the ones that work you do more of, and the ones that don't work you do less of. Not none, you do less of, because maybe you did them wrong, maybe you need to do, maybe to try again. And it's all of these little bets that over time, the little bets become better bets, and you put more money there, and then they grow even further, and then that becomes the engines, multiples, that drive your business from a marketing perspective.
Lots of it. We need lots of engines, apparently, in business these days.
They drive everything, right?
They do. They do. They do. The more, the better. More engines. Well, good. Well, great interview, and I thank them for coming on. And hopefully, we'll have them back someday to talk. Especially if they do another version of that report, it'd be really fun to kind of compare and contrast year over year. Especially as we kind of get away from the COVID stuff, because we know that growth was kind of crazy during the COVID year. We didn't know that marketing efforts were there, but it'll be good to see as the world kind of stabilizes how things are going to be changing in terms of growth. But we're going to move on. We got Dave Sobel for a few more minutes. We'll do a short fun game, and then we'll move to close. So Dave, we've been playing a game called Versus on the show. It's basically a this or that kind of thing. We're gonna see if we can nail down your favorite of a certain something. We've talked a lot about donuts on the show, and we want to do donuts, but we just did donuts. It was like the last episode or the one before that. So why don't we broaden our category to something that I know you love, because you've told us you have a sweet tooth. So let's just go into the realm of desserts in general and see where we land, and see if we can come up with some of Dave's favorite desserts. Rich, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. Dave, you can only have one: apple pie or cheesecake.
Oh, okay, that's cheesecake. So pie is good, but I don't want to disrespect it, but I'm going to go with the cheesecake.
Going cheesecake though. So, but Rich, you went with the fruit pie. Not everybody's a big fan of fruit pie. I'm going to go into the cream pie land and say cheesecake versus key lime.
I'm going to stick with my cheesecake on that, and that's flavor related.
Oh, flavor related.
Okay. Key lime's good. There are other flavors. I won't tip my hand. That might have offed the cheesecake, but I'm sticking with the cheesecake right now.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if to go key lime, or there's like a chocolate cream pie kind of thing that I could have gone with. But,
by the way, I wouldn't have said no to any of these. If they were put in front of me, I'm going to eat them. But the game is versus.
All right, Rich, over to you. Still with cheesecake.
Dave, cheesecake versus tiramisu.
Sticking with the cheesecake. My immediate context person is am I by myself, or is my wife sitting there? Because she would have wanted the tiramisu. But for me, I'm sticking with the cheesecake. Again, it's a good one, but sticking with it.
All right, it's time to go into the world of chocolate. Let's go with cheesecake versus like a gooey molten brownie. Chocolate.
Oh, we're moving to the brownie. I'm a sucker for brownies. Like that is definitely, you're ratcheting it up here, so we're going there.
Taking our game up. All right, Rich, we're on brownies now. We'll get a couple more.
It is tough to top the brownie. I'm gonna go with a brownie, like the brownie Matt just described, versus a freshly baked chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, I'm hopping to the cookie. Again, those particularly because you put the qualifier in there, freshly baked, when it's coming out, it's a little gooey and stuff like that. Now I'm gonna go be finding one after this show. Yes, so
right.
I'm gonna move over to the freshly baked chocolate chip cookie. I'm a sucker for good cookies.
Freshly baked cookies are delicious. But there's hot desserts and there's cold desserts. And there are lots of people that love their ice cream. So why don't we go chocolate chip cookie versus what would be a great flavor? Peanut butter chocolate ice cream.
Sticking with the cookie on that one, and I'll hint, it's all flavor related.
Oh,
on
it's
that.
flavor. I picked the wrong flavor. All right, Rich. Still chocolate chip cookie.
Gosh, now I'm trying to figure out what there's a big clue there in terms of the flavor profile that we're looking for here. I'm sure it's staring us right in the face.
You want the vanilla guy? No, I don't think so. I don't think chocolate's the right one. I should have said Rocky Road. Darn it.
Gosh, let's see. I mean, we started with cheesecake. Well, how about this? Freshly baked chocolate chip cookie or freshly baked chocolate cake?
Ooh, it's tough. I'm going to the chocolate cake because, by the way, we're all in really good territory here, and I like to maximize my value. A slice of cake, a little bit more than a chocolate chip cookie. There's more to it.
Awesome. Can we beat chocolate cake? We can take one more crack at it, Rich. Can we beat chocolate cake? Dave, nod your head if we can beat chocolate cake.
Oh yeah. There's tons of delicious desserts out there, guys.
There are. Rich, we don't necessarily have to take I don't necessarily have to take a turn if you can think of a good one. Because I don't know if I can think of another good one. There are a lot of good desserts, though. I feel like ice cream was a fail.
Oh, you guys are. I will throw a hint to make this fun. You are overthinking it.
Overthinking.
You don't necessarily need new things. You can just vary flavors, for example, of the things you've offered.
All right. Rich, we can each take one more turn because we'll end with you. And if we end with chocolate cake, that's a good dessert to end on. We're gonna switch up the flavor big time. Instead of what I say, peanut butter chocolate ice cream, I could just say chocolate fudge, or I could maybe throw you off and go mint chocolate because I think
you found the magic. Mint chocolate's my favorite, and I would jump to that over a chocolate cake.
All right, so Rich, we're at mint, and I love mint chocolate ice cream. By the way, that's also my favorite. Rich, can you top mint chocolate ice cream? This will be our last shot.
To be clear, Dave, is mint chocolate chip your favorite dessert or your favorite ice cream?
Favorite ice cream. Ice cream.
So there's potentially.
There's immediate two versions of desserts that I thought of, like three. I can think of three things that would be like, oh yeah, those would top a slice of chocolate cake.
Good golly, what are we not thinking of, Matt?
I will give you what my wife would say at this moment. She goes, Dave is something of a child with some of his tastes. He likes complex food, but also loves childhood favorites.
Childhood favorites.
That is such a great clue, and I still don't know. Childhood favorites, and because we already covered the cake,
we're gonna do a guess. Rich, do a guess, and then we're gonna end a little differently this time because I really need to know. So, Rich, take a guess. Take a crack.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna try to spin the ice cream thing a little bit differently and say mint chocolate chip versus an ice cream sundae, like a hot fudge sundae.
Ooh, what's the flavor of the ice cream?
Vanilla.
Sticking with the mint chocolate chip. If you throw mint chocolate chip in it, I would have moved, but
too easy.
Because now you're just adding goodness to the flavor.
Right. How do you make mint chocolate chip better by adding layers of fudge and marshmallow?
Right, add fudge to it. What amazing! Now you've just given me more.
All right, so Dave, if we were to end on your favorite dessert period, where should we have gone? What should we have guessed?
Oh, so there's not a single favorite because I actually don't think you have to pick one. I think the joy is having everything. But the immediate thing that I'm going to tease and go, you didn't think of simply changing the flavor to a childhood style favorite. I love those, like a yellow cake, the sweet yellow cake with the white frosting more than chocolate cake.
Oh, like birthday cake.
Like birthday, like proper birthday cake is just that's just among my top favorites. And I'll order the birthday cake ice cream, or I'll like any variation of it in cupcakes, or all of those things are like crack. They're just too good.
And what a great dessert to end on. Birthday cake. Happy
Cake.
birthday. I'm sure one of you listeners out there, viewers, are having a birthday. And to you, this is to you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Send me some cake, please.
Send Dave cake. Lots of cake, please. So we'll say goodbye to Dave in a minute. Thanks for playing along, by the way. That was really fun and very interesting. And like now I know what kind of dessert to get you for next time we get together. Rich, tell us what we might have missed and what might be coming ahead.
Well, you know what, we ordinarily tell you what you might have missed in our James Gaskin's In Case You Missed It post. We're sticking with our every other week schedule on that for right now. So this is an off week, but I can tell you what's coming up. And we know we're past Labor Day now because the conference circuit is starting to heat up a little bit. Intel is doing its innovation event next week. NetSuite is doing its Suite World event. IoT World happens next week. And our friends at the ASCII Group are doing their latest conference in Newark, New Jersey. So lots of stuff happening in conference land next week.
Awesome. And where can you go to find out all of that stuff? ChannelProWeekly.com. No, that's not the website. ChannelProNetwork.com is the website to go each and every day. Set it as your homepage, bookmark it, and there you'll find all the latest news, articles, resources, downloads, white papers, all that kind of stuff. Set it as your homepage. Make sure you go there all the time and get all that good information. If you, of course, subscribe to the Channel Pro Weekly podcast everywhere podcasts are found. We're in Google, we're in Stitcher, we're in Spotify. If you like to watch it on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, leave a comment. Those are always helpful and good too. And Dave will come and he'll argue with you in the comment section if you want,
which is great fun.
Wrong, which is always great fun. So do that as well. And of course, Rich, we do have an event coming up. We haven't really talked much about the November event, but we do have an event coming up. We'll talk a little bit more about it next week when we do the show. But we go to channelproforum.com/LA, channelproforum.com/LA, or events.channelpronetwork.com, and you can register in advance for the LA in-person event. We also have a virtual event coming up in October, though, right?
October 11th is our Business Management Online Summit. So yeah, events.channelpronetwork.com to get details on that.
Yeah, I forgot that one's coming up even sooner. So good virtual event coming up, and those are easy to attend, and you can attend from anywhere, and you don't even have to be wearing pants because it's a virtual event. So, it's optional as well. All right, Dave Sobel, our guest host, he's like, what the hell have I gotten myself into with this show?
You're assuming I'm wearing pants. So.
It's business up top, party at the bottom. Dave, thanks so much for being on and sticking with us. A lot of fun. Great show. Did you have a good time?
Always. Thanks for having me, guys. It's great fun.
Good. And for folks who want to learn more about you, want to listen to the Business of Tech podcast, where can they go? How can they network with you? Where can they do all that stuff?
All the links to everything that I do are at businessof.tech. You can subscribe to the podcast. There's a big blue button for that. You can get the daily digest, the weekly newsletter. You can find me on YouTube, all the different places, including written versions of all my stories, available at businessof.tech.
Businessof.tech. Make sure you go there, folks. Make sure you subscribe, and it's awesome stuff. And big thanks to Dave for being on. And with that, we're going to wrap up episode 240. It's been a great ride, and we will see everybody in 241 next week. See you then.